And it's COMP397 fall session 2015, and we are week 2, lesson 2, part 1. And last week we kind of did an intro on Create.js. We used Visual Studio Code because our friend Steven, he insisted, right? But now he has he says he has his laptop, so we can probably revert back to Visual Studio, the primary way we do stuff. It's just a little easier. It doesn't mean that it's any better. I'd like to try and intercut between the two anyway, to kind of show you both ways. Who's a Mac user in the room? Anybody? Some people who are Mac users or Linux people, you'll appreciate this piece. So again, as I mentioned, a couple of changes since last week. One of them is that we have a change to our version of TypeScript. So TypeScript, if I go to the command line and go tsc-v, you can see I've installed TypeScript 1.6.2. This may affect your the way we do things in terms of our workflow, because there's a slight change and it includes different features. Let's talk about those in a bit. I'm happy that it went forward. It's a little fast for me. The people at TypeScript are really booting it when it comes to their next version. The last time was only a few months ago. They just went to 1.5, and now they're at 1.6. That's insanely fast for a developer, but I'm happy on one hand. So if I go look at TypeScript, just to show you what I'm talking about, if I say get TypeScript now, and if you want to download it, now it's 1.6. And there's a couple ways to get it, like I said before. You can use, on the command line, npm install -g TypeScript, which is one way to get it. And you can, of course, get it right through Visual Studio. Okay. So how do I update my Visual Studio so that it uses the latest version of TypeScript? Well, Visual Studio Web Essentials usually carries TypeScript, and they do an update for you. So if I was to go back to Visual Studio, and let me launch Visual Studio for you, so I'll show you what I'm talking about here. On its own, Visual Studio is a great little tool. Actually, let me rephrase. On its own, Visual Studio is a great big tool. But one thing you probably want to do is, sorry, just going to reset the settings here so we can all see the screen a little nicer, not such a big, crazy screen. Not that it will help with our lovely Windows 10, but hey, what the hell. I keep doing that sign out later thing, so it's, of course, it's my fault. The Windows people will say, it's your fault, you didn't sign out, and that's why it looks the way it does. Here in within Visual Studio, one thing you need to do is update your Visual Studio Web Essentials. And of course, where would I get that from? If I go to VS webessentials.com, here it is, right? Then you'd want to add this extension on to Visual Studio, and then it's lesson 2, right? Because this is lesson 2 today. Again, today I'm not going to give an assignment. What I want to do today is really work on tooling and tech a little bit to get you guys an understanding of what we're doing with Visual Studio, why we're using it, how we're building our game out, and give you a good foundation of the tools that we need to use. So we're going to talk about GitHub. I'm going to talk about some tool sets to help us build out some of our planning for our games and so on. I'm going to probably share a game design document with you that you guys, on the game side, if you're a game person, I'm going to share it with you so you can use it again in your games or whatever. And so on. We're going to talk about this. Okay, so here's our ASP.NET web application. I've called it COMP397. I'm also going to click on this create new Git repository. You might see add to source control or something on yours if you've never done it before, right? Click on that, right? Because I want you to get familiar with using Git. Okay, I'm going to press OK. When I do that, it's going to pull up a bunch of templates, right? One of them is going to be the empty template. Let's turn the lights down so we can all see a little better. So here's the empty template. Now there's other options. If you're going to build an application with ASP.NET or ASP.NET MVC, lots of templates here to do that. We're not going to build that kind of application. So all we need is the empty application template. If you notice here, we also have an option to host in the cloud. And I'm going to be talking about Azure a lot in this course because I really believe let's try and host as much as we can on the cloud. I want to move away from the school server. I know we have a little local host here, studentweb.syncall.ca. It always gets reset every semester. I don't know why they wipe it out or something, right? I personally don't like that, and there's going to be a couple options I want to try with you. One is hosting it on GitHub, directly on GitHub with GitHub pages. So we're going to talk about that today. The other option is hosting it on the cloud with Azure, and we have to talk about signing up for Azure, Azure for students. There is a package for students that you can download and install, and I fully encourage you to do that. And it also helps you with other courses. If you're taking the web services course in the future, or emerging technologies after that, we're going to be using Azure or some kind of web service as we go forward. So I want you to be able to deploy something live that you can show anybody in the world, not just here at school, right? And it's good training for you, so you can put it on your resume, right? You know, the best things for you is to try something real world, which means complexity, which means possible failure, some things that we have to work on, how to make sure how this all works. So, you know, it's a little bit more challenging to do, but once we've done it, you're going to be very happy. Okay, so let's click on empty and press OK. We're not going to click this option for now. We're going to leave it open. So here we are. We've pressed OK, and I'm waiting for Visual Studio to come up. And if you notice, a new Git repository, I got that message that a new Git repository was created. I'm gonna shift between pinning this and unpinning my Solution Explorer window. And if you don't have one of my windows up, you can certainly add them in by going into Window, right? For example, or let's go back here. View. If I go to View, you can see that there's a bunch of windows here that I can add in, and I can see that I've got Team Explorer window down here, Properties down here. I've got some other windows that I'm going to be opening up, but you can find them all here. If you don't have them on yours, you can always add them in into your custom view. Okay. One of the things you're also going to notice is, I'm going to keep this pinned here for a second. I'm going to add in, let's add in the first of our files, an index.html file. We're going to redo what we did last time, but just with Visual Studio and from scratch, like I said. So here's index.html, and I'm just going to type in index there, and it's going to add in my HTML file. To note, there is if you notice here, there is some stuff that I don't like that it adds in. I'm just going to unpin this one so you can see a full view here. I like the doc type being HTML. That's HTML5 compliant. That's good, right? This, though, we can remove, and we can add in there lang is equal to English. That's a kind of a thing we want to try and do. So we want to kind of specify our language as English. In the head of our document, like we did last time, I want to put a meta tag in there, right, with a character set of UTF-8, right? That is a pretty standard character set that we're going to be using for our games. Okay, the next one, of course, if we want to make it mobile compliant, we're going to put a meta tag in there with name is equal to viewport, and content is equal to width is equal to device width, initial scale 1. That's kind of just a standard that I usually put into all my code now. So the viewport tag is really for mobile devices, but it's also for our content, so it reflows into smaller devices. If you're going to make a mobile game, mobile web game, you'd want to include this meta tag so that your browser knows how to handle different viewports, and actually provides a width property depending on what width you're getting from your browser. Okay, so I'm going to save that. And so that's the first piece that I want. I'm going to just make this a little smaller. If you notice, I've got a really fat scroll bar here, and you may or may not have that. How do I get that? And do you want it? If you do want it, you can right-click on your scroll bar, and if I can go scroll bar options, right? If you notice on the right here, I have this right here, which is use map mode for vertical scroll bar. I've turned that on, and I show my preview tooltip, right? And I've made it so that my source overview is medium. That means I can make this as small, narrow, wide, however fat I want to make this toolbar. And the reason why I like this a lot is because it gives me kind of a map of what it looks like. If I hover over this area here, and especially if I have long code, I can kind of scroll through here and see where I'm at and click where I want to be, right? The blue line tells me what I'm looking at right now, okay, for Visual Studio. Again, more of a modern viewpoint. So this is cool. I've got this. I can just put on a title. Title is important when we make our web game. I'm going to call this COMP397. It'll be, again, lesson 2. That's what it'll be, right? And I'm going to save that one as well. I've got my first file. Let's build out our folder structure before we commit to GitHub. I want to kind of put together that little folder structure for us, right? So again, I'm right-clicking on my project itself, right? Here's my project in Visual Studio. I'm right-clicking and adding a new folder, right? Here's my new folder. And in here, I want to call this folder content. right? Content is where our CSS is going to appear. Let's do a couple more. Right-click. I'm going to add a new folder. And this one I'll add in is called scripts. That's where our JavaScript will live, right? All of our JavaScript. I'm going to right-click and add a new folder. I'm going to put all my assets in the assets folder. Notice I put capital A, capital C, capital S. Which you might say, whoa, that's kind of weird, Tom. Taking other web courses, and they say put lowercase and put underscores and everything else. You're right. There's different, best practices. And the best practices I'm using is compatible with Visual Studio. You can still use it with other code. Like if you wanted to port this code over to Visual Studio Code or brackets or something else, you could do it, like a non-Microsoft platform. But this way, it's compatible with Microsoft as well, because Microsoft's going to populate our scripts inside of our scripts, our CSS inside of our content. It's going to create those directories for you anyway. Might as well save the time instead of renaming everything for it to just happen this way. And it doesn't really matter. It's just our core content, right? Inside my assets, I want to create a couple more folders. One of them is going to be called images, lowercase, and another one is going to be called fonts. Why not? Let's even add one more that we're going to make. That's going to be called audio. So any audio files, music, whatever, inside there, right? So that's where our assets are going to be. And inside of our scripts, I also want to create some folder structure here for a script file. So I'm going to right-click on scripts. I'm going to add a folder called core, where we're going to keep all of our core files, right? Like core game files, and there should be only one at the beginning, right? And I'm also going to create another folder under scripts called lib for our library files. Example, if we installed things like create.js, or if we installed Jquery or our stats.js or whatever, I'd put it all inside here. So that's really our folder structure, right, that I'm going to start using right now. We're definitely going to add more folder structure to our scripts, because we're going to add in, for every script we make, for a button or an object we make, we're probably going to have an objects folder. I might have a managers folder. I might have additional folders in addition to these ones. Almost think about them as namespaces. In Java, they would be called packages, right? So we're going to create almost like this other folder structure that we're going to contain our files. It's really important when you're a game developer or when you're building a large application to keep organized, right? If you're unorganized or disorganized when you create your file structure, it's going to really affect you at the end, right? As you're building it out and you get more and more complex, it's going to really be a pain in the ass, okay? So I'm preparing you ahead of time by saying, hey, let's keep organized right from the get-go. Okay, we're almost there in terms of what I want to save online now. I want to kind of right-click on my content, and I want to create a new style sheet for my application, and I'm going to call this game.css, right? So here's my game.css. I'm going to modify this in a sec. Okay, I'm going to leave this blank for now, but I need to include it in the body of my document. I need to link it to my document. But before I do that, I'm going to add some comments in here. Here's my comments and say, this is the CSS section. If we're going to add in additional CSS, this is where it would be. Okay? So here's my game CSS. I'm just going to drag and drop that underneath my comment here. And Visual Studio is good that it just creates my my link for me like this. I don't have to type anything. And that's why I kind of like Visual Studio from a game development perspective. It's quick. It's not because I'm lazy. I can do it. It just takes time, and we only have a limited time together, right? So I've got my style sheet. Now, another thing I do need for gaming, like I mentioned before we get into any of the other libraries, I'm always going to use my canvas. The canvas element, right, itself, or the canvas tags. So let's start canvas tags. You notice it gives me code hinting. And I've got my canvas tags. In the middle, you don't put anything. There isn't anything else that creates this element. I don't have to put in any kind of text. Originally, back in the day, when we first started doing games with HTML5 canvas, well, we'd need to put some kind of fallback text in there. So if your browser didn't support, then you would have a message that says, your browser doesn't support canvas, please upgrade to the next version or something, right? Fortunately for us, most browsers now, we have a good greater than 90% adoption rate of Canvas. So now let's go in there and put in a couple of items here. One is my ID. My ID is going to be canvas, right? And again, you can call this arcade, you can call this canvas, you can call it game, you can call it stage, whatever you want, right? We're also going to put in a couple of properties that you could set up with your, I don't know why they do this every time. They always go to this corner, they start talking, right? It's okay. They left. I want you to put the width property in, and we'll hard code it here to 640, right? This is like old school gaming platform type, right? And our height will be 480. Now again, there's some good things we can do here. We can always modify this. You can modify it within your code. You could certainly not include it here and include it in your CSS. You can do that as well. Some people will do that. Some people will actually modify it via JavaScript. So depending on the size of your screen or your viewport size, you'll change the port size. There's additional complexity around that because if you want to be responsive, like you want your game to work on all platforms, you also have to modify the size of your graphics and swap out graphics when you do that. So again, this is something we may be able to get to near the end of the course, depending on you guys and how much you push me, right? But chances are in other iterations of this course, we just haven't been able to get to it because of the volume of stuff we need to do, right? Okay, so again, so that we got the basics in here. What I want to do is at least create, some kind of a way of detecting our canvas. I'm in my game.css file. I'm just going to wipe away the body tag. I don't need to do that right now. And what I'm going to do is target all canvases. So here's all canvases on my this canvas element itself. And I'm going to say all canvases have some kind of border that's 1 pixel solid black. Okay, and that's going to be what my canvas will look like. Right. So there's going to be a 1 pixel solid black border. If you really want to get fancy, right? Let's do a border radius on this thing, just so it's a little bit rounded. A border radius of, let's say, 5 pixels. That's not enough. We'll make maybe 10 pixels would be better. Let's do 10 pixels. All right. So what does this look like now? So I'm going to go back here and let's launch this piece of application right now to test it and see what we've got. Right now, this is no JavaScript here. This is just pure HTML and CSS. Let's see what happens when I launch this thing. Okay. Fahim, you can just wait. Here it is. So there's my little border. This is where my game's going to play. And you can see the rounded borders. Makes it look nice, huh? Nice. Okay, for those people who used to doing this kind of stuff, how do I make this canvas appear in the middle of my screen with CSS? You guys remember? Zero auto, right? I can do that. I could definitely create a width for my canvas. I could say my canvas is going to take 80% of my screen. This div tag, 80% of my screen. I can set up another wrapper for my around my canvas. That's totally cool. So let's do that. So I'll go. Here's my div tag. Okay, with like I said, with a class of, I don't know, game or wrapper or something. Let's make it game since it's a game, right? It's a wrapper that's going to surround my canvas, right? And there it is. So there's my div tag. I want to target my div tag and kind of give it some stuff with CSS, right? So how I'm going to do that, I'm going to say something like this. Anything with a class of, did I give it a class? Yeah. I did, yeah? Anything with a class of game, as an example, I want it to have a width of 80%, right? And a margin of 0 auto. Let's see if that works for us, right? There's some challenges here, right? Because you're going to say, hold on, we don't know what width 80% is, but we did define it. We defined it with our meta tag. Our meta tag knows what my width is going to be. So this might work for us. Let's see what it does. So I'm going to kind of refresh. And that should kind of teleport us a little bit to the middle. So you see it's giving us a little bit of margin, right, for my width and everything else, right? Now, why isn't my canvas tag appearing in the middle? Why is it appearing on the side? And if you wanted to show that, you can do kind of an inspect element. And if you notice, it's kind of small to see here. Let me reduce the size so you can really see it. There's my canvas. I've made it 75% of the size. So if you notice if I click on my div tag, it is 80%. You see how I have a margin on this side and a margin on this side of 20%, right? So it's good. But you see how my canvas floats in the middle somewhere because I haven't really told it what to do. I haven't defined anything for my canvas itself. My canvas doesn't have any margins, right? I haven't said, hey, give a margin of my to my canvas of 80% with float of, whatever, right? I could. Let's try it out. If I really wanted to be a stickler just from just basic CSS, if I wanted to get there, I could try that. Now, there's a challenge here. I'm telling you right now, right? The challenge is I have to define a width for my canvas, which I already have, 640 pixels, right? And that's the problem because my canvas is 640 pixels wide, right? How do I say how much do I say for the right and the left, right? How do I center it? And could I do something like this? Text align center. Sometimes text align center, believe it or not, aligns all kinds of things, not just stuff. So let me just refresh this. Just kill this one and refresh this one and see what it does. It doesn't do it for this one, right? The good thing is that we do have our CSS on the right-hand side, and you see it shows you the box model here. So it shows my game is being affected when I hover over it. If I go to the canvas itself, I see that I have a, even though text align is center, it doesn't do anything. Whether I take it off or put it back on, there's no difference. So that's not the right one to add. What if I try adding in something like a margin or something, like a left margin? So if I go margin dash left, just to try it out, of 20%. Let's see what that does, right? So you see how it moved over instantly, right? I can do these tests live. I want you to think about this. I can modify stuff as we go, right? Which means if I can do this margin left 20%, right? Then I can do it in code too, right? So let's go back to the code. I could do a margin left of 20%, right? I know that that's one thing I could do inside the middle, or and this would be in our canvas element CSS rule that we use, the selector tool that we're using, right? So let's just use this margin. Let's try zero auto and see what happens, right? So if we go zero auto within the actual from my canvas itself, let's see if that works, and it probably won't. I'll show you the differences here. Let's go back to this. I'll refresh the screen and back to where it was before, right? So that won't work for us because we can't use auto because we haven't defined a width. If I define the width to my canvas, it'll override the width that I'm defining. That width of 640 pixels is going to mess us right up. So please don't do that. That would be bad. So what would we do then? So I could define, like I said, going back to the application, I could define a margin left, and this is what I know it would be. A margin left is of a minimum or of 20%, let's say, or something like that. So just to push it to the right a little bit. So it's somewhat centered. There's other ways we can target this later on. Not that important, but I'm putting it in there so you guys can see for yourselves. There's different ways we can do this. Now be careful because we're going to put other things in here to modify later on. Okay, let's go back to this. And we'll refresh the screen now, and we can see that it's somewhat centered in my screen. Your screen may not look centered. Because again, my screen is of weird resolution right now. The good thing is, because I've added in my meta tags, if I close the screen up, you can see how it's trying to push to the left, right? But my margin, because the reason why it's squishing in like this is because my canvas is a minimum of 640 pixels, regardless of how big my screen size is. So if my screen size right now is greater than 640 pixels, it won't resize my canvas, and it can't. Okay, unfortunately, right? So just the way it works right now for our basic game. So be aware of what it's doing here, just so you guys understand. When I put it up here, I'm going to go back to the regular size. I'm going to go back to 100%, so you see how big, really big it is. Even 20% for me may not be the right amount. Like 20%, that's 20% of the container size, right? One more change, and then we'll stop with the CSS. We probably won't talk about it again, all right? Because it's not that important. If we go back to something like a 15%, let's try this out. Again, just something that you might want to kind of modify for yourself, so it's somewhat in the middle, so it doesn't look too much, off kilter. Even 10%. Even 10% might be okay, at least for my screen size. And yours might be whatever it's going to be to make yours work okay for you. I like to see my screen in the middle only because it gives me a view of this is my game, right? I don't want it to be on the left-hand side. It kind of look clunky, right? Okay, cool. What about if I wanted to change the background color? So I only see this screen here, but my background color is black. How do I do that? So I'm going to go back to my body tag, right? And I'm going to say body. And let's try this background dash color. I'm going to say body. Okay, let's refresh and see if that does that. What happened? How come my canvas went black too? And that's the issue, my friends, right? My canvas, if I want my canvas to have a background color, a default background color, there's a couple ways I can handle this. But trying to put a background color on my canvas, let's see if it works. So background color. We're talking canvas now, right? So we should probably talk about a little bit about the canvas element so you understand what it can do, right? Remember, the canvas element, I want you to think about it as an erase board, white or kind of a dry erase board, right? Now the background color of my canvas, even though I've made it white, and you can make your screen black or blue or whatever color you feel comfortable with making. The reason why I'm making it like this is so we can focus on the game. Don't worry about the extra screen stuff on the outside, right? That's not important for us, right? So it looks more of like an HTML game, okay? All right, so we got our game canvas. Remember, it's a white erase board. When anything I put on there, I'm responsible to manage. I'm responsible to redraw the graphics. I'm responsible to redraw the text. I'm responsible to take care of the game loop. It's all my responsibility. Computer and the application doesn't take care of it for me. I got to make sure I handle it, and I got to program it myself. Okay, just notes. By the way, if I think black is too stark for my background color, and I want to do something else like a dark gray, right? So I can kind of do that. I think gray. If I do one of those, dark gray, I can change the background color of that and refresh. And that might be a better fit for me because then I can see the black line that goes around my canvas as well, like this. A little nicer, a little easier on the eyes too. Black is a little stark for me. The black and white contrast is too much. So this might be something that I might want to stay with. Okay, so we're done setting up our canvas. I'm not going to talk about this again, not for a long time, right? And we're going to stop debugging because we can't make any changes to Visual Studio unless we stop debugging, especially from a content perspective. Not permanent changes, especially dragging and dropping will not work if you are debugging. You have to stop debugging for dragging and dropping to work. Okay, so let's go back, and we're going to go back to our content. All right, let's add in a couple of scripts. So I want to add in my first script file in my core. I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to add my first game script, right? I want to make it so it's a TypeScript file. Hey, there's some new stuff going on here, right? There's a TypeScript JSX file. That's brand new, right? And you're going to get this if you got the latest version of Visual Studio Web Essentials. But let's just stick with a TypeScript file. I'm going to call this thing game. Okay? When I do that, it's going to come up and say, "Hey, I see that you're installing TypeScript. Can we use NuGet, right, which is the package manager built into Visual Studio, to download some typings?" Remember we talked about typings last day, right? And how what typings do is they align almost like a type definition library for each of our libraries that we're going to be using in our application. So if I want to use Jquery, I need a typing for Jquery. Otherwise, I won't get the code hinting for Jquery, right? So Visual Studio with TypeScript is great, but I need the type definition library to give me the code hinting. That's like the IntelliSense. It almost highlights all the IntelliSense for me. Right? One day they might have this all built in. So then all the common libraries, TypeScript knows about them all, right? But unfortunately, there's so many third-party libraries out there, they're all handled individually for now. Okay, and maybe this will be moot because you know what? All the cool features that are included in TypeScript today will be included in ECMAScript 6 or ECMAScript X in the future, like all this classes and this kind of stuff, these constructs in the future. So I'm going to press OK, press yes. And it's going to ask me for what type of typings I want. If you notice, the first one that comes up, the most popular one is Jquery, right? I don't want to use Jquery because I don't need Jquery within my code. But let's suppose I did, and just for a test, and I did this with your template, your boilerplate. I included Jquery. So let's do that. Let's include the TypeScript definition for Jquery. Let's click install. What it does is it goes up on I'm going to close this down. And it goes and installs another folder called Jquery. If you notice, it's also open up my game.ts file, which I'm going to close for a second. So here's my Jquery, right? And if you notice, it includes one file, the Jquery definition library. And if I was to look inside of it, like double click, it actually gives me a definition for the Jquery library. So it talks about different aspects of it. Like for example, this interface, Jquery Ajax settings, and if I keep looking into it, every piece of Jquery is outlined to give you code hinting. That's what it looks like. So example, data, data filter, data types for Jquery. The question mark, whenever you see a question mark around something, it's an optional property. That's a great thing that's added into TypeScript. So you may or may not use this, or may not be included in your method or function. And if you notice, every piece of Jquery or aspect of Jquery is included. From interfaces, I'm just going to skip down here to a little bit lower down. Things like outer width, position, scroll left, every kind of method or function that Jquery uses pretty much is outlined. And all they do is just outline what the method is looking for to give you the code hinting. That's all a type definition library is. You and I can write a type definition library for our own libraries. We just have to put the method signature, right? And that's it. Yeah. I only showed just Jquery. And if you didn't show you the Visual Studio, which one? The one in front of you on the system? Again, you may need Visual Studio Web Essentials, right, to be installed. Sorry? And it's okay, it works, but it doesn't give you the typings, like you don't go to NuGet? It doesn't show you NuGet? Okay, so here's what we can do. This is how we can do the typings, right? So if you want to manage NuGet packages for the project, you right-click on your project manually. We're going to do it now anyway. And I want to go to Manage NuGet Packages. And it's going to pull up the NuGet packages that I have in here, right? Now, remember, this is not just for typings, but it also gives me NuGet packages that I want to download. Like, for example, I want to download Jquery, right? Let's download Jquery. So we're going to click on Jquery and click Install. You have that? Let's click Install together. So this is going to actually install my Jquery library. I'm just going to click Close here. Right here in my scripts, right? So if I go Scripts, open it up, there it is. There's my Jquery library, right? I could certainly move this into lib, right? Because it's not dependent on anything else. Warning, if I ever want to uninstall Jquery with NuGet Package Manager after I do my move, right? You have to do it manually. All right, so let's do the move now and not worry about the uninstall, because we're not going to do an uninstall. Just because I want to show you how to do it, right? So I'm here at Jquery. We know it's a common library. I'm just going to drag and drop it here into the lib folder. Okay, so there it is. Now it's in my lib folder, and it should live there. Think about it, a lib folder. We want to hide some of the libraries like Jquery and other ones, so we don't want to clutter our regular files, right? Okay, I don't have Jquery attached to my code here in any way, right? So how do I do that? Remember that I've included my game.css file up here because I linked it in with my files, right? But down here, I don't have anything. And typically what I want to do is put my JavaScript stuff near the bottom of my code to prevent blocking code, which means something that's going to stop my files from loading. Okay, so let's do that. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to type in, JavaScript section or JavaScript libraries. That might be a good thing. Here it is, libraries. And another kind of section we're going to prepare for our game scripts, because we don't have that yet, but we will, right? So here's my JavaScript libraries. Let's include Jquery as my JavaScript library. I want to use my minified version, Jquery 2.1.4.min.js, that one. And let's drag and drop it underneath my JavaScript libraries for now. Now, Tom, you're going to say, why are we doing JavaScript? We're supposed to do, like, create JS or whatever, right? Yeah, let me take it one day at a time, and so you can understand what I'm talking about. We'll build up everything from scratch here. I think it's really important you understand the build, because once you get this, when we do tests, when we look at other code, you've seen how we've built everything up. We're going to go nice and slow, so there's no, you're not foggy about how it's done. Hopefully you're not, anyway. All right, cool. This is my JavaScript library, but we need to include my game.ts file, right? because this is where everything's going to live in my game.ts file here in the core, right? So I'm going to drag this thing from my core and underneath my game scripts. And notice how it changes from game.ts to game.js. Now, we don't have a game.js file yet because we haven't compiled anything. We haven't done anything in our game file, but it's there. It's linked. It's waiting for one of those, right? Okay, cool. So that's the first thing we do. We kind of link our libraries, and then we have our game.js. Okay, remember, we won't be able to get to my game.js unless we have some kind of code that's going to link us. There's going to be some way of linking to it. It's not going to fire. It's not going to trigger at that level unless I do something to trigger it, all right? So there's a couple of things we need to do in prep. Yes? Which one? These ones? Which one? 2.1.4 min.js. The min.js is the minified version of the file, right? So it's the one that's, it's not the developer version, it's the production version, right? So if I actually double click on this, you can actually see what it looks like. It's a minified version of Jquery. It's compressed, right? So that it's not fat and it runs a little quicker. If I was going to use I want my libraries should all be like this, okay? Now, eventually, we should be able to minify our own, right? And compile everything into one big file to minify. And there is a way, there's a process we can do that near the end of our course, okay? But for now, we don't have any files, so it's okay, right? All right, so here's our Jquery library, and I've included it here. I want to double click on my game.ts file now so we can get to that. So here we are, it's empty, right? In order for me to get code hinting for any library, remember what I did last time, we need a reference to the library, right? So what am I going to do? I'm going to take my Jquery 2.1.4.min.js and drag it into my file, my game.ts file. What this does, if I do it properly, so if I drag one of these two files in there, right? If you notice, it's not doing it here, but the typing will. Here's the typing. That's what I meant to do. Here's my typing. I drag my typing in. Bam. I have my reference path for my typing, right? It's my Jquery library. And what it's going to do, I'm just going to make this really, really small so you can see it, right? It says, hey, by the way, all my data types and the type definition library for Jquery is here. All right? Okay, good. Now what this does is it says, now I have access to that library. Let's take this away for a second, and I'll show you the difference. Okay, so here's my type definition library, and I need to access this file. So let's create a simple JavaScript function we're going to call init. Okay, this is my JavaScript function init. This is the simple way to do it. Okay, and inside my init function, right, I want to put a console command, console.log. Hey, notice how it's going to be very similar to what we did in people who are with me on the game side, debug.log, console.log, and we're going to say game started, just as a test. Okay. Now, it won't get there unless we initialize our code somehow. And the way to do that, of course, is in my index.html, right? In the body tag, the simplest way to do it without creating a self-executing closure, because there's a way of doing a self-executing closure, you don't need this, right? You can go on load, right? Let's fire up my init function. That's what this does, right? So now, when it comes to the body tag, when the body tag loads, when this is all loaded up, it's going to fire up my game.js file. Okay. Okay, cool. In order for us to see what this looks like, let me unpin this for you and take a look at what the TypeScript looks like on the right-hand side. Here's TypeScript on the left-hand side. Here's JavaScript on the right. TypeScript, JavaScript. Okay, identical right now. There's no difference, right? So we're going to save, and now what I want to do is I want to try and access Jquery in my function somewhere or above my function. And of course, how do we do that? We put the $sign in there, right? And then we kind of do something like this, get ready, right? So we go document dot, and I don't get any code hinting, right? I'm not getting code hinting because I don't have the type definition library reference to my file. Now let's add that back in. All right, so I'm going to kind of kill this for a second, and I'll show you the difference. No code hinting, right? And now I'll bring up my Solution Explorer, and I'll drag and drop my type definition library in the top of my file. So here it is. jquery.d.ts. And let's unclip that one. And now let's do the same thing. I'm going to say, hey, jQuery, give me my document.ready. Look at all the functions. Look at all the code I'm getting now. I'm getting the code hinting because I included my type definition library. No type definition library, no code hinting. Okay? The power of TypeScript, out the window. Why do we use it without this? There's two parts to it, in other words. I need the TypeScript library installed in my system, plus the type definition library running. Yeah. jQuery.d.ts. I use NuGet to get it. Now, if you don't have that, if you didn't get it from NuGet, let's get it from NuGet. All right. So NuGet again. I'm just going to get rid of this for a second so we can go and try this out. Let's go back to this because I know some people didn't get it. I'm going to pin this back up. I'm going to right-click on the project, right? And I'm going to manage NuGet packages, and I'm going to search for TypeScript. So I'm going to say jQuery TypeScript. I'm just going to type it like this. Let's see what I get. See these blue DTs? That's definitely type. That's where it comes from. And it gives you two things, some information. If you notice, it's been installed, right? See that? It gives you the date that it's been updated, 8/26/2015. Very, very important. You don't want a file that's old, right? If it's something like, 1/13/2014, man, don't use that unless there's nothing else newer, okay? So you need to do that here, okay? If you notice, there's a bunch of other jQuery ones, right? Because they have other libraries that they've kind of derived from jQuery, and they have other typings in here. All right. How about stats? I want to get my stats going on, right? So if I type in stats, just like this by itself, I want my stats to come across. So when I do my almost I want to be able to measure how my file is doing. I want my stats to come across. Now I have my typing for stats, and take a look. Stats, the last typing was 2/16/2015, so quite a while ago. Nothing's really much changed since then, though, I'll be honest. So that's probably okay, all right? And I know because I've been using this library over and over again. I don't see my stats library here in NuGet, though. If I kind of click down at different versions here, I'm going to try and find it here. Let me take a look, right? I see a bunch of other things, but nothing to say that these are the right libraries. So I can't download the actual stats library, right? But I can download the type definition library. Well, let's do some prep and download the type definition library because between you, my friends, we're going to use stats, right? I know this. So let's do this. Let's click on stats, this one, not fast stats. And I want to include this by clicking install. Okay, so there's install. I've done that now. I don't have my stats library, but if you notice under typings, I have jQuery now and stats. There it is. Now, if I look at the stats type definition file, I know it's the right one because in here it's going to say something like Mr. Doob, right? And this is see Mr. Doob right here. This is the actual project for stats. So if I take this link, right, copy it, and go to the web browser, and go here to grab my library, and press enter, right? It'll take me right to the GitHub repository for stats. So this is a JavaScript performance monitor is what this thing is. And I need a performance monitor that I can choose to turn off or on, right, whenever I please, so that way I can see my stats, how many frames per second I'm getting from my code. I think this is important for us to do. Okay? So let's download this thing. There's a couple ways to do that. I can certainly fork it and put it into my files, my own GitHub library, right? If you have use for that. Or I can just download the zip file. Let's just download the zip file for now. Download zip. Okay, cool. So there it is. I'm downloading the zip file. And if there's another thing that says open in Visual Studio, we're not going to do that right now. Let's just download the zip file and wait for it to finish. Okay, there it is. Okay, cool. So it's in my downloads. Let's take a look at where it comes down, right? Again, I'm building this stuff out with you slowly. And it's important for us to do this. Here's my stats.js master. By the way, in this area here, I have I've already unzipped it, and I've got my my package. And inside here, if you notice, there's a source folder with the stats.js library. That's what I want. So go ahead and do that. Download the stats library from Mr. Doob, right? on GitHub, right? It's a funny name, Mr. Dupe, right? And what I want to do then is once I have this, I want to take this foreign library and include it in my lib folder by dragging and dropping from my Windows File Explorer into my lib folder like this, right? Just drag and drop across. And when you do, it's going to copy it inside my project. If you don't do this, and somehow you try and do it manually by dragging and dropping it into your project files on Windows File Explorer, won't work. Windows Visual Studio won't pick it up, right? It's not like it watches like Visual Studio Code and brackets. It doesn't do that. Okay, so I've got my stats here. There it is. See? So I got my stats library and my stats d.ts file. Remember, I can't access my typings. So I'm just gonna, until I drag and drop. Let me just come over here like this for a second. And so I got Jquery, I got stats. I'm going to pull over my typings for my stats and make a reference. Here it is. So there's both files now, right? And if I want to test it, right, as an example, by the way, this has to be on its own line, right? Because otherwise, what you're going to get is some weird. I just cut it off. So I just dragged and dropped it. That's a bit of a bug, right? See, that's messed up. Let's try that again. Sorry, because I'm in compressed mode. Sometimes it does that kind of thing. Even stats.ds got cut off. Look, I'm getting a bit of an error, right? We'll talk about invalid reference directive syntax. Don't worry about that. But here, let me show you this again. So if I drag and drop Jquery, the Jquery typings, I need to put it on its own line. Right, there it is. And the problem that see, there it goes away. But it came. The reason why is because it came to because when I dragged and dropped this one, right, it killed my / when I dragged and dropped it across. Just as a, if you see that kind of bug, it's not a big deal. Okay, so now I've got my reference path. Now I can access stats. So if I do something like this and I say var stats, right, lowercase, right, is of type. The type. This is where we go. Stats with a capital T, a capital S, right? I should be able to see stats, this stats class. And I'm getting that because of my type definition library, okay? Okay, I'm not going to do that stats right now. I'm just including it as one of my typings. Still not quite finished. I'm not ready to push it to GitHub yet, all right? We're almost going to be stopping in a second anyway. Let's save everything, and let's go back to my index.html. I don't need my stats.d.ts file anymore. If you notice, it's very short. Look at my stats.d.ts file. All it is just, like I said, it just outlines what it's looking for each of the, it's very simple. Actually, if anything, it's like, you know what, it's silly stupid. Like, that's how big d.ts files are. So if I wanted to declare my own type definition library, think about them as declaring abstract methods. That's all I'm doing. All I'm doing is declaring the method signature, and that's it in my type definition file, right? And so for me, that's a good way of declaring things for jQuery. It makes me happy that it's that simple, but it gives me the code engine that I want. And it stopped me from loading or even building my file if something's wrong, which is what I want. We're going to make some modifications. You're going to see there's going to be one or two type definition libraries that come right from NuGet that are wrong. They're not going to work properly, right? And we're going to have to fix them. So it's a good practice for us. Okay, cool. I need the other files. I need my create.js files. I can't grab those create.js libraries from NuGet. They don't have them in NuGet. So I'll redirect you to what we did last time. So here we are, and I want to grab my create.js library. So I'm going to go createjs.com. Right, and in there, if you're going to notice, by the way, Grant Skinner, the guy who is the main guy for create.js and Easel.js, he was actually at Flash in the Can, or FITC this week, down on in the International Center downtown Toronto. He was there for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, I believe, or Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, or something like that, where he was doing his, this whole thing on front-end libraries. That's what he does, and he was the originator of this. So it would have been great to see this guy. He's the guy that made our create.js library, right? And he's the guy that worked with Adobe on creating the type, the kit, the create.js toolkit for Flash, right? So we went right from Flash to create.js, and it would have been a great opportunity for you guys to meet him if you're interested in front-end development technologies. So lots of props to this guy. Anyway, so you need all these libraries. So I want to download everything, right? So if I go download again, and I've done this already, it's going to take me to my download screen, and you really need all of these, right? Now it's kind of in a compressed view for me because I have my browser is looking at it kind of in a funny resolution, right? So here are the 4 that you need. Of note, if you ever want to know if things have updated, right, tools and so on, and if I go to blog, right, it always kind of gives us updates when new versions of everything is released. Like the last time new versions were released were May 28th of 2015. So we're pretty cool. Nothing's been released in the last 3 months. By the way, when this was released, same time pretty much, time frame approximately where TypeScript was updated. So that was okay. I haven't seen an update for CreateJS since then, which is okay, good, because if we had it now, we'd have to update all of our libraries, which is a really big pain in the ass, right? There's always some minor changes and additions and improvements, right? Okay, so we don't have to worry about those, but you download the libraries from there. Now, I've already got them downloaded. Certainly, you can go ahead and download them. I've got them here under my downloads file. If you notice, I've got my easel, my preload, my sound, my tween.js, and so on. I need all these libraries to include here, and I'm going to drag and drop them into my Solution Explorer. So again, I would download them from that site. So go to that site and go download, and go into each of these libraries here for easel.js, tween, sound, and preload, and download those files. That's what I ask you to do right now. Now, you might say, hey, what about the CDN? Eh? We talked about this last time. I could use the content delivery network to do it. At one point, when we started off with the content delivery network, we were like, oh, wait a minute, it's not a local file. Well, I don't have access to the internet. What's going to happen, right? Guys, if you don't have access to the CDNs now, I mean, it's not only the internet's down. I mean, it prevents you from actually using them if the internet's down, right? If we're working locally, and that's why I recommend downloading everything, and you're working on development of your game, you'd want to download everything. When your game is in full swing production and it's online somewhere, you can totally use the CDNs and replace the local libraries. It's lighter, you know, it caches them, and it serves them from places that never go down. They have like 5 nines availability, right? So don't worry about that in terms of availability. But for our purposes, because we're developing, I would ask you to download the library. So go ahead and download these libraries. There should be 4 of them. And if you notice here, I have these 4, easel.js, and mine versions are 0.8.1, preload 0.6.1, sound 0.6.1, and tween 0.6.1. Those are the versions you should be downloading, if I'm not wrong.
You want the next combined one?
No. We'll talk about those in a second. So if I start off, I want to use easel.js, and I want to go into my lib folder, right? And in my lib folder, I have all these different things in my lib folder of easel.js 0.8.1, right? I want to bring up Visual Studio at the same time here. Here's my Visual Studio. And I want to bring up my Solution Explorer and pin it so I can start doing my dragging and dropping, okay? So here's easel.js 0.8.1 min.js. I want to grab this easel.js and drag and drop it into my library, my lib folder. It's my first one, right? That's where it's going to go. And I'm going to do the same for the others. So let's just do that really quickly. So I'm going to go back up to downloads. And I'm going to do them in the same order that I see them. So I'm going to go into lib, grab my preload, drag and drop. Right? I'm going to go into my, back into my downloads. I'm going to get my sound. I'm going to go into my lib. Now, I'm going to warn you about sound. There's some really weird things going on with sound and the type definition library, okay? It's always like that, unfortunately, for people who make sound. They have extra work to do, right? Jay. But anyway, so I'm going to drag and drop this sound.js file right into my lib folder, which is good. So we have got my sound in there now. And I need one more. I need tween. Now, like I said before, chances are we won't get to tween, but it's always good to have it there if you want to use it. And in the future, we're building up our boilerplate from scratch here today. So this is what we're doing, and that's why I'd ask you to kind of do this with me so you understand the boilerplate. Okay, so here it is. I'm going to drag this into lib. Okay, cool. And we've got everything now, but they're not included here in my HTML file, right? So they're useless to me. Where they sit nicely in a nice place, right? But they're not connected to my index.html file. They're not included in my program, even if they're in my structure. It doesn't matter. right? I need to include them, and I'm going to put them in my JavaScript library position underneath jQuery. Now, jQuery for us, absolutely useless, but we're going to. I've included it just so that way you can see what it looks like to include it as, and that's what that was our first little test we did, right? Let's drag in order. This is what I want you to drag into your libraries in order. So the first one is easel.js. That should be underneath jQuery. I'm just drag and dropping this in, okay? And then the next one after easel, this is the actual script files now, okay? Not the type definition libraries. We haven't got those yet, okay? Then I want you to grab your tween.js and put that under easel. And then your sound.js and put that under tween. And finally, your preload.js and drop that in after sound. So you've got everything in there now. I recommend it. Let's also put in, just for now, underneath my jQuery, let's put in my stats.js. Okay, because I've got that in there. We're going to do stats eventually too. Might as well put it in. Okay, cool. So I've got all these libraries in here, right? Stats, jQuery, easel, tween, sound, preload, all that stuff's in there. I need my type definition libraries in my game.js file in order for me to make it work. Or else I don't have any types or code hinting whatsoever. Again, pretty useless for me to use TypeScript without. So I'm just going to kind of go a little bit smaller so you guys can see what I'm doing, right? From a high level. And now I'm going to go in and I need my type definition libraries for this, but I don't have them yet. So I have to find them. Let's go into right click and into my project, and I'm going to manage NuGet packages. I'm going to go back in here and type in here create.js. And press enter. Now, you've noticed there's two libraries here. One, that's from 7/2/2014. Remember I warned you guys? 7/2/2014, that's last year. And there's another one from 1/22/2015. Which one should I choose? This one, obviously, right? I'm going to click install here in my NuGet package manager, the second one. When I do that, right, it installs the type definition library for my create.js library. Now, I'm not done, right? If I notice down here, if I look down here, I only have create.js-lib. How about easel.js? Let's add that in too. So I'm going to say easel.js. Here's my easel.js piece, right? I notice I have one here. I want to download and install that one. There it is. That's included, right? I also want to include not just easel.js, but tween.js. Let's do that. We'll just search for all of them individually. Tween.js. So I'm going to put in this one, which is already there. Hey, it's checkmarked. That got loaded in with easel.js, by the way. How about sound? Is that in by any chance? Let's check this out. Sometimes they include more than one. No, of course not. Here's my sound.js, and this is where the problems are going to come up, guys. FYI, don't be afraid when you see this. Don't be. If you see red marks on your stuff, it's not because you made a mistake. It's because sound.js is the problem child, right? You want that in there. And let's put one more. Let's do preload. Let's see if that's in there let's see if that's in there or not. So preload.js, and yes, it is. It's already been included. Okay, cool. So we've got our typings, right? So far, no errors. And if you notice, I've got jQuery and stats at the top here, my game.ts file, and I want to drag and drop my new typings. I'm going to do them in order. So watch me here. First, my create.js.lib.d.ts has to be in. Right? That's my typing for my first one, right? Then easel. My easel.js.d.ts. Ooh, look at the problem that I had. I'm going to do that. I just did it again, right? See what happened? No, I'm saying that's how easy it is to mess up, right? Here, let's try and do that again without making that mistake happen. See that I did that because of the split. Hold on a second. This will really try and fix it. That's what it is. It's just me. It's not you. Right, so let's try this again. Here, there we go. And then I'll so easel.js now tween. All right. So on the bottom here, there's tween. I'm going to drag this and drop it underneath that. There we go. Finally, right? Sound, which we should get errors, right? Should get errors. If we don't, I'm good, right? Oh, that was an error, but it went away. Okay. And here's preload.js.d.ts, and we'll put that in there too. Okay, cool. Right. So all my libraries are in. I've got references to all of them, and now I should be able to access them. Yeah. Well. I'll let you see for yourself. I'm not going to try and spoil it for you. It's like spoilers, right? for all the fun we're going to have doing this, because this is a bit of, you know, there's a bit of fun in putting things together for me. All right, first of all, this init function is perfectly useless right now. Right? We need to kind of make some definitions. So before we end this particular video, I want to kind of create what we need. So I'm going to create a variable var. That's how we declare a variable, and we're going to create a canvas variable. Remember we did this last time, canvas. But we're going to make a reference to the canvas variable as an HTML element. That's what that is, right? That's what a canvas element, canvas variable is, right? Press that alone and press save. So canvas. Okay. We also need to make, and this is a global variable, by the way, a stage variable that we need that is of type, and this is how you know CreateJS is working. We start typing CreateJS and you get those little brackets. We know that the object is found, right? CreateJS.stage, capital S. So we've made, all we're doing is just like we did last time in Java, we did this in Game Programming 1. All we're doing is reserving the memory and the space for our class. There is no class object yet. There's no object of the class. We just put in space aside, some memory, to say, hey, I'm going to use a stage. I need you to put some memory aside for my stage. This is what the shape of the stage is going to look like. Okay, right here. Okay, cool. So far, so good, right? And let's make some comments here that tell us what this thing is. These are our global. We'll call them game framework variables, so we know what they are. We can always change this and make them non-global later on. There's some complexity around that, but we're saying we could, right? Okay, cool. Now we need in our init function to initialize this canvas and everything else. So the first thing we want to do is say canvas then is equal to, without Jquery, document get element by ID. We're going to target the canvas element. So we're making a reference to the canvas element on the screen. So reference to canvas element. Okay, that's what that is. And the next one is we're going to declare our stage or define our stage, right? By the way, if you're behind or you're not with me, please slow me down because I want you guys to get this piece. All right. Our stage then is equal to a new. There's my new keyword, CreateJS.stage, capital S. And if you notice, if I press open, right? If I open up my first parentheses, right? It shows me what I need. It's listening for a canvas HTML element. I could have put in the HTML canvas element, but the HTML element itself is the parent of HTML canvas element. So this works. So let's change this just to be purely compliant, right? So HTML canvas element, which is what it is, right? That's what it's listening for. Might as well give it what it's listening for, okay? So I'm going to put in canvas, right? Because that's our canvas, the canvas variable we've declared is the same one that we've made. Now here's the issue. Take a look at this. When I made it a canvas element, canvas, this document.getElementById canvas doesn't know what that is. And this is why I reverted back to it being an element. See where we're getting our problems? It doesn't understand what it is. And in fact, it's saying if I hover over, it says type HTML element is not assignable to type HTML canvas element. I'm just stating it so you understand. And it's not because we can't fix it. We can certainly fix it and define our canvas as an HTML canvas element. But that's why I just go back to what it was before, just so you guys are clear. And if I do that, my error goes bye-bye. Okay? It's still good enough for me anyway. So what am I doing with this area this here? I'm assigning my canvas then as so what we're doing is we're making a reference to we're actually passing the reference for the canvas into the stage. So we're passing stage or canvas to stage, right? So that we can use the canvas HTML element to draw on. That's all I'm doing. Okay. Couple more. I'm going to use the static class, right? Ticker. It comes with CreateJS, and this is how we're going to set up our game loop now. Okay. So I'm going to go CreateJS. Right, dot ticker with a capital T, right? Dot set FPS, which is set the frame rate, So 60 frames per second. So this here we're doing it manually. Stuff that we would do in that happens automatically in Unity and other game systems, we're making it happen by itself. And we're going to say set frame rate at 60 frames per second, right? That's what that's doing. Okay. We also want to make an event listener, right, for our ticker. So the ticker is ticking every frame. Remember, just like we did this last time. This is a review, right? And we're going to create an event listener for that. So we're going to create JS ticker, the static class, and we're going to say .on. You could also have done .add event listener. They're the same. On is a little bit more powerful in that it allows us to send in the context for this, which is this object we're creating here, on. And we're gonna there's an enumeration that we're gonna look for, which is called tick. You have to know this enumeration, right? And inside we're gonna say, well, after we detect a tick, what do you want me to do? It has to go somewhere, right? And it has to go to some kind of other function or callback, if you will. So I'm gonna call this thing game loop, which we've kind of done before, right? Now, we don't have a game loop function, right? So update game loop every frame. That's what this is doing, right? Okay, so where's my game loop? I don't have my game loop. Let's make it. So down here underneath this init function, we're going to make another function called game loop. We're going to define it as, well, first of all, we have to fix the init function in a second. My game loop is going to have an event variable that's going to be passed to it of type createjs.event. And it's going to return, this is my return value, void. Remember, we have return values for functions with TypeScript. So, for example, our init function has a return type of void. Right? Sorry, I know I'm blocking. So that takes away this issue here. So this is the game loop. So this is where all the fun happens, right? So main game loop. This is where every frame something's going to happen, right? So this would be equivalent to update and Unity, right? That's what this is, this game loop, right? All right, for those people who are doing Unity with me this semester. Okay, so so what do I do in here? Well, I need to do a stage update at the very minimum. So I go to stage.update. And then what this does is it refreshes my refresh or redraw. I would say redraw / refresh stage. Right, that's what it's doing. And that does it every frame. Every frame. Okay. We're kind of annotating it for you so you know what it's doing, right? Okay, well, we have nothing in the stage. So finally, we've done this game loop and everything else, but we need some kind of main function to run everything, to drive everything, our main game, if you will, right? This is one thing we don't have in Unity. Almost like I've got to create a game controller, right? The thing that controls the game, the function that controls the entire game, right? So I need something called game. So I'm going to kind of say, or main. Let's call it main. So I'm going to say main. I'm going to call main a function call. So call main game function or method. It doesn't exist. That's why it's giving me the underline, right? Let's make it. So here we are. Function main doesn't take any variables, and it's gonna return void, nothing. And inside there is where we're gonna do our stuff. This is this is where all the fun happens. Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
But that's really what it does. It's all the fun happens in that. Okay, because inside of our main loop, this is where the stuff we do. We can program things like, we can add things to the display list. In Create.js, we have a display list. And think of it as an array. And every object we add into the array gets added in an order from position 0, this is 0-based array, counting in JavaScript, all the way up. So it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, every object we add in, right? So the display list layers everything in that order. Just keep that in mind when we do these examples, right? Okay, we're almost ready. We're almost ready to stop. I'm ready to stop, right? Talking nonstop for over an hour. So how do I do this now? I've got to create my basic elements. We did this last time. let us do our hello world again, right? So we need a function to do that, and I need an element to do that, some kind of variable. Here it is. This is our game variables up here. These are global too, right? And we're going to make a variable called hello label. Remember we did this last time, which is of type createjs.text. We're just reserving some space for this in memory, right? And because we're making it global, it's available to all the functions inside of our little file here, right? Okay, so now let's do this. Let's make this hello label function, right? So we're going to say hello label then, right, is equal to a new createjs.text. Not tag request. Createjs.text. There. And what is it expecting? I'll bring this up so you can see the code heading again. Just like to remind you from last time, a string for the text, right? In this particular case, our string for the label is hello world. We're going to modify this later on. The font type, which is, I need a size. Let's make it 60 pixels for the font. And the font type is Consola, so you can choose another. And then our color for the font is number. We're going to use hexadecimal values. 000000. Make it black. And so that's defining our object. Our object is this hello label, which is a type of text object. That's what it is. Okay, cool. Remember, it's not a text object you can highlight, code, copy and paste, or anything else. It's a rasterized text object that's going to become pixels later on. When we put it on the stage, it's going to be pixels, right? Okay, we have to define a couple things. Last time, you know, you were saying to me, hey, wait a minute, it's top left corner, right? Top left corner. Remember, we have to set the focal point or registration point of our label to the middle so we can center our label properly. And we're going to do that again from scratch without kind of puddling around there. So we're going to say hello label then dot regex, which is the registration value on the x-axis. We're going to set that to hello label dot getBounds dot width, right? Times 0.5. So half the width of the label. We're going to set our registration mark, right, in the middle. That's what we're saying here. Let's do the same thing for the y-axis. So hello label dot reg-y, which is the registration mark on the y-axis going down, right? We're going to set the middle of that. We're going to say hello label then dot getBounds dot height, right, times 0.5. And again, remember I'm using 0. Times. I'm multiplying by 0.5 instead of dividing because it's more efficient from when we play games to multiply than divide. Even from, if we think about Unity, please do that in Unity as well, and other game engines. All right, so this is the next piece. Now, let's talk about the x and y coordinates, right? So hello label.x then is equal to 320, because that's the exact center of our screen, 320. And then hello label.y, right, we'll make it 240, because that's the middle of our screen on the vertical, right? Finally, after we've defined our object, and this is a lot of definition here, let us add it to the stage. And so we're going to say stage.addChild, which is going to add this as a child to the stage in our hierarchy, right? And hello label. So we're going to say hello label. We're going to pass hello label as a parameter to to make it a child of the stage. So take hello label and make it a child of the stage is what this line is saying. Add it in to the display list, which really shows the label. That's what it's doing. As soon as I add something to the stage, add child, I'm actually displaying it on the stage. Before this, I can, if I didn't do this add child stuff, I can position it all I want. It just won't exist, right? Until I do this. So this add label to the stage. That's what this is doing. This is really like a game object, if you will. Okay, cool. Let's save everything and finally run it, test it. We've got a lot of different things here, and we've got quite a bit of code that we kind of hand-coded here. We can bomb all this stuff, right? It's important for us to understand all this, and let's run it. Okay, so if everything works well, then I should have hello world, right? It's roughly centered. If you notice, there is a bit of a problem with where it is because my registration mark isn't quite right. And I'll mention this so you guys understand this for once and for all. There's two things that are happening here, all right? Because I'm going to mention it just so you see what I'm saying. One, when it comes to our text values, when I do a measured, some kind of measuring of our text, it's not accurate. It doesn't matter whether you try and measure it with any kind of get bounds or get measured width or whatever, it won't be as accurate. So please you may have to make adjustments number one. Second, our CSS affects the way the padding, the default padding and margin and everything else that affects the body of our document affects our CSS. So it's a great, there's good work in putting in a reset.css file inside of our document to reduce any kind of external CSS or the browser styles, get rid of the browser styles with some kind of reset. That's a very good thing to do. So we're missing that, and where can I get my reset file? Do you guys know? Anybody? I want to reset my CSS or normalize. You can actually look for that on Google. Let's look at that before we stop. So I'll say reset CSS, right? And there's one by, an old one by, this more very common one by Meyer Web. All right, so if I go to meyerweb.com, Eric Tools, right? And if I download my CSS, I could get a copy of the file by right-clicking and saving as. Let's do that. Right-click, save link as, right? And if you notice, it's downloading our reset.css. It's trying to put it somewhere. I want to put it in my downloads, right? So I'm going to go see download somewhere, right? And the reason for this, just to let you guys, just make you aware of what I'm doing, is I want you to, yeah, this is it. I want you to get this download stuff done, all the things you need to get done over with in the beginning as much as possible before when we make up our file for the first time. Now after this, I have my boilerplate. Guys, it's working, it's updated. Never have to do this thing again. But I want you guys to see it for the first time and build it with me so you're in the guts of it, right? Or else we're gonna have problems later on. Okay, there's my reset CSS. And I'm gonna go into, again, we're into Meyer Web. I'm gonna bring up my Visual Studio. I'm gonna stop debugging because I can't drag and drop when I'm debugging. I'm gonna pin my Solution Explorer up. I'm gonna go into my file here and drag my reset CSS into my content folder. So that's where all my CSS goes, remember? Hey, you know what I don't wanna do? I don't wanna drag my reset CSS underneath, right, my game.css. It has to be above, right? So I wanna reset first and then set my styles up. And we're gonna see immediate change to what it looks like. So I'm gonna grab my reset CSS and put it above my game.css. There it is. And save. And run. And now let's see what happens. You notice a few things. This didn't fix too much, but up here, see, there's no margin anymore. So that's gone, right? And anything else we add into the file, the CSS has been reset. So this is the best you're gonna get. We may have to make some adjustments to Hello World right now, but that's the best you're gonna get from a CSS perspective. We've eliminated any kind of other issues, all right? I think this is a great place to stop. When we come back, I'll update things to GitHub. It's a good place to take a break at 5 o'clock, right? We're only here till about 6:30, so it's about halfway. We're at the halfway mark, okay? Body of our document affects our CSS. So it's a great, there's good work in putting in a reset.css file inside of our document to reduce any kind of external CSS or the browser styles, get rid of the browser styles with some kind of reset. That's a very good thing to do. So we're missing that, and where can I get my reset file? Do you guys know? Anybody? I want to reset my CSS or normalize. You can actually look for that on Google. Let's look at that before we stop. So I'll say reset CSS, right? And there's one by, an old one by, this more very common one by Meyer Web. All right, so if I go to meyerweb.com, Eric Tools, right? And if I download my CSS, I could get a copy of the file by right-clicking and saving as. Let's do that. Right-click, save link as, right? And if you notice, it's downloading our reset.css. It's trying to put it somewhere. I want to put it in my downloads, right? So I'm going to go see download somewhere, right? And the reason for this, just to let you guys, just make you aware of what I'm doing, is I want you to, yeah, this is it. I want you to get this download stuff done, all the things you need to get done over with in the beginning as much as possible before when we make up our file for the first time. Now, after this, I have my boilerplate. Guys, it's working, it's updated. Never have to do this thing again. But I want you guys to see it for the first time and build it with me so you're in the guts of it, right? Or else we're going to have problems later on. Okay, there's my reset CSS. And I'm going to go into, again, we're into Meyer Web. I'm going to bring up my Visual Studio. I'm going to stop debugging because I can't drag and drop when I'm debugging. I'm going to pin my Solution Explorer up. I'm going to go into my file here and drag my reset CSS into my content folder. So that's where all my CSS goes, remember? Hey, you know what I don't want to do? I don't want to drag my reset CSS underneath, right, my game.css. It has to be above, right? So I want to reset first and then set my styles up. And we're going to see immediate change to what it looks like. So I'm going to grab my reset CSS and put it above my game.css. There it is. And save. And run. And now let's see what happens. We notice a few things. This didn't fix too much, but up here, see, there's no margin anymore. So that's gone, right? And anything else we add into the file, the CSS has been reset. So this is the best you're going to get. We may have to make some adjustments to Hello World right now, but that's the best you're going to get from a CSS perspective. We've eliminated any kind of other issues, all right? I think this is a great place to stop. When we come back, I'll update things to GitHub. It's a good place to take a break at 5 o'clock, right? We're only here till about 6:30, so it's about halfway. We're at the halfway mark, okay?